Oh, from New York, you are listening to Extra Time. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer. Three-man weave continues. David Goss to the bench. Water break. Tom Bogert. Dr. Scoops is in the building. Matt Doyle. This is going to be a good show, guys. We've got a new producer on the show. Did you know that?
Yeah. I don't recognize the voice on the other end. It's not Maria.
No, it's Anders, but also Cameron Wiebe here is for quality control, let's say.
Jeez, I forgot about Anders.
Yeah. It's like,
he's just in meetings his entire week.
He's a suit.
So is Cam interning for...
No, I wouldn't subject him to that.
Wiebe was trying to go through his head. It's like, is there any labor laws violated if I say yes?
More of a consultant, I would say. Actually, currently, somewhere in the
money
building
is, actually, yeah.
Playing Star Wars Legos on the Nintendo Switch. So he's having much more fun than we are, and by extension, you listening to us. Look, match day 34, we've got some more clinchers as far as the playoffs go. Philadelphia Union in, Atlanta United in, New England Revolution backing in. Thanks to other results, 6 in the Eastern Conference and just 1 in the West. That's interesting. Meanwhile, in the West, the Rapids did get eliminated. Unlucky for them. 3-2 loss in Portland. Felipe Mora probably should have been sent off. I take that back. Should have been sent off for a terrible tackle on Andrew Gutman. And guess who scores the winner for the Timbers? Well, it's Felipe Mora. So let's start here before we hit all of our best things we saw, of course. Philly, Atlanta, New England, Doyle. Who is the biggest, most dangerous, most likely MLS Cup contender in that trio?
Philly. Just because we've seen them get to finals before, like very recently. They have the high-end talent. They have not been able to put it together and get everyone healthy and on the same page in those biggest moments. Though I would argue they were actually the better team on the field last year in MLS Cup for the final 60 minutes. But like Philly's done it before. And the other thing is that in tournament play, the two things I look for are, can you strangle teams defensively? Like, can you limit quality and quantity of chances you give up? And Philadelphia, when they're locked in, are an obvious yes there. And then do you have match winners? And I think they're an obvious yes there as well. What we haven't seen from them is their defensive match winners and their attacking match winners all have the game they need to have at the same time on the biggest stage. I kind of feel like they're due. With New England and Atlanta, as much fun as they are, and
New England fun right now?
I mean, yeah, they were actually kind of fun against Chicago, but they were also kind of a disaster defensively. Clint P.A. did something new tactically. He had Matt Polster play on the left side of a back four and then come inside in possession. And you could see it actually led to some very good attacking play. It led to Carlos Heel's equalizer because Polster comes inside and they outman Chicago in central midfield. And then that opens up the wing. So Dave Romney, I think it was, played a ball over the top into the run for Shankly, I want to say it was. I don't remember the exact sequence, but like it was built out of that. But also on the other side of the field, they turned Jonathan Dean into Cafu a few times because he just had the whole flank to get forward. So they're like Clint PA is actively trying to solve the defensive issues that we've been talking about with New England really since like 2019. Like since they started being decent, they were always like, oh, all attack. You know, like if it's 3-2, they probably have a good bet. But if it's a tight game in the playoffs, they're not as good a bet. And then Atlanta United, like, yeah, they're a lot of fun. They have an attacking quartet now with Jean de Silva and Sabadlaj Vinica added to Almada and Giacomakis, who might be the best 4-man attack in the entire league. And yes, I'm including Miami in that metric. And Tristan Mayumba's solved a lot of their issues in central midfield. But also, like, even against Montreal at home, they're still playing a suicide line with no pressure on the ball and getting beat over the top. And Brad Guzan is probably the weakest goalkeeper of the three teams that we just discussed. So I think Atlanta is kind of destined to flame out in the playoffs in like a 4-2 loss. So of those three, yes, Philadelphia Union still the likeliest team to win MLS Cup this year.
I was listening to all that and honestly zoning out, just thinking about, look, Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce, to be honest with you. You know, what did they do last night? Are they an item? This is very important to those of us in Kansas City that care about such things.
Wiebe,
no, I'm just kidding. I was locked
Wiebe,
in.
do you have a list of MLS players that you would like to see date Taylor Swift instead for the content opportunities?
Here's a question for you.
Is that because I just gave us 5 minutes on MLS Cup contenders.
Yeah, no, that was great. I was locked into that. But as far as Taylor Swift contenders, no, Andre suggested John Tolkien. We need it. That's more of a Gen Z star. We would need to match up with Tolkien. I don't know that there's somebody who has the presence in MLS. Very few in the world would have the presence. I'm not even a Taylor Swift fan.
Yeah, you shouldn't be looking at me. I'm not going to give you anything.
Got anybody?
I'm not going to give you anything.
I don't know marital statuses off the top of my head, so I'm not going to get anybody in trouble by speculating here. So I'm sitting this one out.
Wow. Sources aren't connecting you with that, huh?
We're just gonna keep it safe.
Contract status, but not marital status, says Tom Bogert. Cool.
Can't be. What was the LA Lakers play? D'Angelo Russell. Can't be D'Angelo Russell out here.
Okay, I don't know that reference.
You know,
I know that reference. Yeah. But I don't think we're going to talk.
Yeah, I think we should just close that door right now. Anyway, congratulations to Travis for whatever the heck's going on there. Jersey Week has begun.
That was a fantastic segment, by the way.
You like that?
Awesome.
I made a conscious decision earlier this year.
I gave you your 4 minutes.
No, I made a conscious decision earlier this year to try to yes and more of Wiebe's bits, but like I could not take that one anywhere.
That was no but instead of yes and, I think, from you. All right, Jersey Week is here. Celebrate your favorite club now through September 30th during this special moment. Why is it special? Daily offers and discounts.
Is it special
at MLS
because the Sounders are going to rebrand? They're going to announce their new logo tomorrow? I think that's something that I saw happen.
Yeah, and it looks like it's going to be sort of old school back to the NASL days. Is that what the tea leaves I'm reading here?
Yeah, well, judging by their social media, it looks like the Space Needle is still going to be prominently involved. It does seem like a throwback. Next year's their 50th anniversary, right?
I think so. Yes, but Orca?
I'm in for the Orca. Yeah, that'd be great.
We need the Orca.
Yeah, we got to get Kalen on that.
We got to get Kalen Carr a new Sounders jersey. If it is indeed the Orca, it's the closest he'll have been to an Orca in his life. If you don't get the reference, then you're either not listening to every single show or I don't know what else. Anyway, back to MLS and Matchday 34. Tom, what's the best thing you saw?
The best thing I saw, I got to shout it out to the fans that there was a tropical storm kind of ripping up the East Coast, and DC United, New York Red Bulls wasn't the most glamorous matchup heading into the weekend. And still, during an absolute tropical storm, there were a lot of fans there in the stands. There was really good TV camera work every time they cut to them when the rain was coming in sideways. There's a couple people with beverages putting their hand over the beverage to take a sip, and the ponchos. They looked a little sad.
Very focused on the beverage technique.
And they got treated to a 5-3 game. Like, had to have been, if you power rank the games on which game is most likely this week and have 8 goals. How low would that be on the power ranking?
The very bottom.
So I'm very glad. Shout out to those fans who stayed. Shout out to the Austin fans on Sunday night after a lightning delay. So at least it wasn't like pouring down rain while they were there, but they stayed for a few hour delay, and almost
3 hours.
Austin treated them to giving up 2 goals in stoppage time to throw away a 3-1 lead.
What was that? Probably around 6 hours plus, depending on when you arrived for the game in stadium, only to sit around to get punched in the gut. That whole game felt like a fever dream to me. Like, I was recording instant replay trying to wait out the lightning delay, and I was like, surely they will start. And then I saw the images of the field, and it looked like a swimming pool. Yeah. I was like, oh, no, not for me. I'm going to bed. And I woke up assuming that no game happened, and I look at the MLS app. 3-3? Oh, you got to be kidding me.
Wild.
All right, Doyle, what's the best thing you saw?
Lucho Acosta, who is the MVP this year and should probably win it unanimously, doing a Maradona tribute with that 3rd goal against Charlotte FC. Granted, there's a difference between Charlotte FC's back line and England in the quarterfinals of the 86 World Cup, but this is just a spectacular goal. There aren't many players in the world who have the individual ability to put together a run like this one. Nutmegs a defender at central midfield, then drives at the back line, beats another defender for pace, and then what makes it so great is that it's not just pure pace at this point. He's varying his stride length, and he's like closing his hips, opening his hips, trying to keep the Charlotte defenders off balance, one in front of him and one on his hip behind him, and he does it perfectly the whole time and turns them inside out in the box. before finishing high to the back post. Probably should have just laid it off for Tom Bogert. But I think after you've made a 60-yard run,
he already gave Aaron Bupenza a goal in this game.
By
They're
the way,
2-0.
did you see Bupenza's celebration?
Yes.
That was, I would say,
tender loving care.
More significant
Yes.
than the Lucho goal was the celebration between Lucho and Bupenza after Lucho teed up Bupenza to make it 2-0. Because another great play from Lucho, pulls it back to the top of the box, and a great finish from Bupenza.
By the way, before that, as it has all year, it's Lucho winning the ball off a defender in the final third to create his own chance. Like doing number 10 things, yes, with the layoff, but also doing like number 8, number 6.
Being a two-way player.
Water carrier things.
And he puts it on Bupenza's left foot, his preferred foot, and he rifles it into the top corner. And Bupenza just starts running to celebrate. And then after about 2 steps, something clicks in his head, and he turns around and he runs straight to Lucho, and they celebrate and they hug and they go walk in front of the Bailey.
And he's like pointing at Lucho, doing the whole
and
embrace.
This is huge because we've talked about it on this show. And look, the Cincinnati staff were not blind to the fact that these two guys have not been on the same page together, and that the body language had not necessarily been great between them. So if you're a Cincinnati fan, like even better than the Lucho goal was how these two, because if Cincinnati is going to do the double, and like they won the Shield, like it's going to be theirs. If Cincinnati is going to do the double, these two guys need to be on the same page. And that showed to me that they understand that the expectations are not just individual production, but somehow figuring out a way to make each other better.
The body language doctor loved that celebration. He was right in for that. That was very, very big. And you said it is on both of them, and they both understand. Lucho knows this. Lucho did this with Brenner. Lucho has done this with Brandon Vasquez. The way that he stepped up as a leader over the past couple of years, from the extreme individual talent that he showed at DC United, and then when he first got to Cincy. But the way he's been a leader and the way he's connected, like, you don't have to worry about him, and both in the way he plays and the way that he kind of carries himself on the field. Bupenza was a different story. Like we talked about it on the show about, you could tell he was frustrated, and he would wear those frustrations outward. He would, if he had half a yard, he'd be demanding the ball. And again, these are all good things for a forward who's probably trying really, really hard to be like, a lot of expectations on me, spend a lot of money on me. I need to score goals. Like, I need things to go well to get off to a good start. And again, this was a very welcome development. And like, I do want to take a step back, and it's not like he was being like an outwardly awful teammate or anything, right? Like, it was just, we were picking up on little signs. All right, okay, like this is going to be the most important thing for them going forward, because you assume Brandon Vasquez is going to leave. So Bupenza and Acosta, their relationship and their productivity together is going to be under the microscope. And this was very, very positive.
It didn't surprise me that he was frustrated or demanding the ball or wanting to be an alpha. Like, you didn't pay $8 million, whatever it was, for a striker in their prime, international, who has a history of scoring a boatload of goals, tied for the Golden Boot in Turkey, to come in and be like, oh, this is Lucho's team. Like, oh, let me back off. Like, no, they just have to find a way to coexist, and in coexisting, to make the absolute best possible relationship between each other on the field. And I do think that ultimately for Bupenza comes down to, if there's a ball dominant force on this team, it's not going to be me, and I have to be okay with that. Right. It's Lucho, and in letting Lucho be that guy, I will reap the benefits of that.
And that's what this was, right? And it was nice to see. I have a soft spot for Cincinnati because I've always loved Lucho, and the Brandon Vasquez story has been so good. But I like to see Bupenza come in the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks, really, it was kind of ugly. To see the way it's turned around now, it makes it exciting. Yeah, it makes it, especially because I have them in the trophy draft. So get the Shield.
Yeah, you do got that locked up. Still banking on Inter Miami. We'll update you later.
And hold on, a more interesting point to this stuff for the Lucho conversation here. He was absolutely cooking after getting a new contract. Not that this was anything new or anything surprising, but chipping it up to himself to do a bicycle attempt, the 60-yard run for the goal where, like you said, it was a 3-on-1 and he took on the defender instead of playing it across, put it in the upper 90. And this, like, I don't know, this was just like, hold up, let him cook, get out of this dude's way. Yeah. It was just tour de force. It was beautiful.
By the way, we're doing power rankings, Red Bulls and DC, and where would that be? Power rankings of which team would have basically 3 defenders beat from midfield by 1 player to be scored on. Charlotte FC are at the very, very top of those power rankings. Aaron Bupenza right now with 4 goals in 392 minutes. It has at times felt, I don't know, strangely a little disappointing, where it's like, oh, I expected something a little bit more special. But you can see the production it's there, and I think it can only go up. for Aaron Bupinza. Let's talk about that new contract for Lucho, just real quick, because we haven't hit it yet, and that is a very big deal. We've been sort of teasing it for a while of like, hey, you have an MVP favorite here, the foundation of your club, still in his late 20s, right?
Yep. 29.
Prime-ish, late prime.
Oh, that's prime.
Lock him down.
Yeah. Yep.
It is special to me to see Lucho reach this sort of pinnacle in his career after seeing him at least start, not his career, but his time in MLS with DC in a little bit more of a mixed bag. To see him develop, to miss out on that PSG move, but go to Mexico, come back, be the foundation of a club that was the worst in Major League Soccer history, and take them not just to respectability, but to dominance, and then get rewarded with that new contract and have the opportunity to win a championship.
And to be the guy who gets the new contract and plays even better.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's special. It's special. These are the sort of stories watching, caring about, being engaged in the league every single day for years and years and years. I mean, you see the literal personal growth of a human and a soccer player, and it's awesome.
Yeah, he's home, and I think that's one of the coolest parts of this is that this is a player who he came through Boca right before he went to DC, and then he was at DC for a decent amount of time, but it's still kind of been bouncing around, and he was at that age where the PSG move, and like you have these dreams and aspirations of Europe, which he did at that time. And then that didn't work out. He leaves DC because they didn't give him a new contract. They let his contract run down to a point where he was like, okay, I'm going to leave for free. And he goes to Mexico, comes back to the United States, to FC Cincinnati. They build this thing around him. Like you said, they go from a laughingstock to dominant. And it's through him. The team runs through him. When Pat Noonan and Chris Albright took over, that was the first thing they did. Lucho, we want to get you the ball higher up the field. We want to empower you. We want to make you our guy, the face of everything. And he was under team, like they already were going to pick, if they hadn't officially picked up his contract option for 2024, they were obviously going to do that. So theoretically, they could have been like, let's talk about it in the winter. Or like, we'll figure it out later. But no, they've been talking for the last 5-6 months. This has been a long ongoing process. Both sides, both Lucho's camp and Cincinnati said like, look, yeah, like it's a big contract. Like, thank you to ownership. Like, he's rewarded for being one of the best players in the league. And in these contracts, they take time because there were asks on both sides. It was very professional. The relationship is great all the way around. And Lucho's home. And they did this over this 6-month period instead of kicking it down the road, instead of, digging their feet in the ground on either side. I want an extra 100,000 or, whatever, these little contract details. Screw it. And they're like, no, they both got it done. And now he's the face of the club moving forward. And it's so important as Brenner already left. Brandon Vasquez is probably going to leave. Alvaro Barrial is probably going to leave at some point in the near future. Yerson Mosquera is going to be gone because he's too good to come back on loan. And the purchase option, if there was a purchase, it'd be a lot more money. So, like, think about all the starters and all the turnover. But you have Lucho Acosta at number 10. And Chris Albright's literal quote was, we have the best number 10 in the league. It's pretty easy to sleep at night. Like, and that's how you build something sustainable. It doesn't matter who comes in and out.
There are two final points I want to make off of this one. One, I kind of wonder if Albright planned it this way to give Lucho the extension right at the start of the stretch run for the vibes.
Yep.
Because
like all the worries away, take all the distractions away, he's just nice, warm, fuzzy inside. This is where I'm at.
And then Lucho took out an ad in the local paper, like a full page thank you to Cincinnati ad in the local paper, and the fans are eating that. So like the vibes have been great all year long for Cincinnati. So they just raised the level.
Two things on that. One, I have been obviously asking people about the new Lucho contract for, like I said, these talks have been going on for a long time. And it took me a little while after I saw the ad. I was like, wait a minute. Did they just agree to terms? Is this like, is this coming right now? I was like, wow. Like, all right, let me start calling people.
You got scoops.
And then the other thing that I thought was funny about that is this was a we, this was a us, this was a home. And the other, I think of a newspaper ad for MLS, it's Zlatan saying, you're welcome. So Zlatan was about Zlatan. Lucho's was a little bit more about us, about the city, about I love you and I love this, rather than you're welcome, I'm here.
How much do you think it would cost to get a full-page newspaper ad in the Jersey Shore?
Asbury Park Press.
I'm just thinking about a mustachioed man sending a message to his community and whether or not that we could afford that as a collective. I'm just considering the
I don't think Tom's on DP money yet.
No, he's not paying for it.
I'm not paying for it.
His PR team is coming in for that one.
The other point that I want to make, like the cherry on top of the Lucho story, is obviously winning Copa America with the U.S. men's national team last summer. Messi versus Lucho in the final.
That's good. That's good.
He's a U.S. citizen.
Yeah, we got a long thread here.
They're still in the process.
Okay,
everything.
I thought it was all done.
Not
No?
that I know.
All right.
Well, we're going to act like it is. Anyway, best thing I saw, Njal Blom, banger. Got to give the number 6 some love when they come out here and do things that are completely outside of what I thought his toolbox was. I didn't think Blom had this in him. St. Louis rotate massively in Minnesota. Minnesota need a win. Don't have Emmanuel Reynoso. Go up 1-0 and Bradley Carnell goes shift change. And Aziel Jackson is a special, fun player who I hope we'll see in this league for a while. But I have to imagine teams are looking at in Europe and saying, "Oh, that ability in transition, that ability in the counter press is really, really impressive. Your vision, technical ability. That's a Minnesota United 2 player that just that took the ball off 2 dudes, did the entire press by himself, drove to the end line, was patient, waited till the opening was there, perfectly played a ball into Blom's feet, who does something. Cuts a dude, cuts it back, right-footed, top corner, curler, one of the best goals I've seen from any midfielder this season. But again, Aziel Jackson was in your club.
He was the best player in MLS Next Pro last year.
Mm-hmm.
How does this happen?
Yeah. I don't know.
On a team in which Franco Fragapane can't give you anything, really.
Yep.
At least not consistently.
And they went out and they spent a lot of money on Song Bin.
Robin
Jung.
Ludd had
Vander
so
Garcia,
much on his
more of a center
shoulders
forward.
that it's not why he got injured, but him leaving was just like this linchpin that just everything collapses down.
They're starting Hassani Dotson, who's a very good central midfielder. They've been starting him on the wing. Fans can be tough. Fans are not always rational about their teams. I think we all understand that. Minnesota United fans, I think, have some legitimate gripes with how Adrian Heath has managed the roster and managed the development or lack thereof of young players, especially because Aziel Jackson was basically gift wrapped to Minnesota United a couple years ago. And he earned, in my opinion, first team minutes with his play last year. And it's not like they were bowled over by an offer. They traded him for $150,000 worth of GAM. And if you put Aziel Jackson on this Minnesota United team this year, he would pretty comfortably be their second best player. Pretty comfortably.
I mean, it's at a point, and we had some doubts about the St. Louis build at times and the level of talent. Like, they all seemed like good players.
This
but
was
what
another
gonna be the
massive Roman Berkey game, by the way.
It was. Roman Berkey maybe could have possibly been sent off for Dogso too, because he went and grabbed Hassani Dotson right around the 6-yard box. I don't think it was Dogso.
Right around the Dogso.
Yeah, you can watch instant replay for the analysis there, which is not to say, like fans, that I am always right about referee decisions. But it's to the point, I think, with St. Louis City that if they call you about a reserve, about a player, and they're just like, yeah, what do you think? Aziel Jackson, like, yeah, I got $150K for you. Yeah. You're like, no, actually, no. Yeah. They're just hanging the phone up.
Right.
On St. Louis.
Yeah.
But maybe somebody else could be calling.
Yeah. So sources have said Lutz Pfannenstiel is subject of interest, of big lucrative interest from 2 Saudi clubs. This is not the first time that teams have been trying to lure him or seeing if he could be lured out of St. Louis. This summer, West Ham and Nottingham Forest were interested in him. I believe the report in Europe was politely turned down. So I think that's exactly how it was phrased around the West Ham stuff. So yeah, my understanding is Lutz Pfannenstiel is very happy in St. Louis. He wants to continue with this project, and that he's not expected to really entertain these overtures. And St. Louis haven't been officially contacted yet, but that's just kind of the way that these things work. But yeah, he's somebody, and we talk about if they call, hey, like maybe I'll double think it or maybe the price goes up. Like this time last year or whatever, like there was a lot of jokes being made at St. Louis's expense for, some of the either decisions they were made or, oh, Roman Berkey, that's too expensive for a goalkeeper, or, who's João Klaus, or Edward Loven, like, oh, he used to have like potential. I remember him, but he didn't really work at Hoffenheim or whatever club it was. It's like, oh, like why are they signing this player or doing that? And the designated team quote, and Lutz saying in an interview with me that if we had Mickey Mouse and Goofy in goal, fans would still show up. We don't need big names. Like, it's crazy how quickly the perception has changed, and rightfully so, that just like there are so many different ways to succeed in this league. That's one of my favorite things about this league.
I'm looking through Lutz's resume, and it takes a long time, a lot of Googling, I don't think that he has either played or managed on the Arabian Peninsula. Basically everywhere else.
New horizons.
So this would just be another
He's played on
stop
6 continents. It's great.
on his Where in the World is Lutz Fun and Steel tour. So, all right. Congratulations, by the way, to St. Louis City. We mentioned Cincinnati likely locked up the Shield. It would take a literal miracle for them to lose it. I don't think that's going to happen. They've been at 98, 99% odds on the Shield for a long time. And St. Louis City, I think, locked up the number 1 overall seed in the West, basically, unless they completely collapse and things change for the teams below them. 53 points. The gap is now 8 on LAFC and Seattle, but LAFC and Seattle have a game in hand. So that could narrow down to 5 with 3 matches to play. But
honestly, it's St. Louis chasing 2 things. Home field advantage through the West, and against, if they make it into MLS Cup, home field advantage against anybody except Cincinnati. So that's 1. And 2, they're chasing history, right? They're going to be the first expansion team ever to win a conference regular season, which is huge. There are 2 expansion teams that have won trophies. Seattle in 2009 won the Open Cup. Chicago in 1998 did the Cup double, MLS Cup and the Open Cup. Do I have that right? Yeah. Chicago
and I do want to point out there was 10 teams or 12 teams in MLS at that point. So like just
12, yeah.
Basic math, not a big math guy, but basic, like it's much more impressive now than in 98.
Sure. The other thing that they're chasing here is this, well, 2 other things. The single season points record for an expansion team, that's 57, set by LAFC in 2018. And the single season points per game record for an expansion team, which again is Chicago in 1998. They were 1.75 points per game. St. Louis is a little bit under that.
1.71 right now.
1.71. It's been a remarkable season. I said Lucho should probably win MVP unanimously. All due respect to Pat Noonan and Ben Olsen and a few other guys. Anyone who doesn't vote for Bradley Carnell for Coach of the Year should have their vote revoked. Like this should be
scorched earth.
Like this should be across the board, because it's not just that he has a team that's on the verge of setting all these records, right? He has gotten buy-in from the big names like Roman Berkey and Edvard Leuven and João Klaus. He has developed young players who were considered fringe MLS players. Like, I mean, Josh Yarrow started at center back. Remember him a couple of years ago? Mm-hmm. Josh Yarrow started at center back. He's had a decent season as like a reserve center back. Jared Stroud has developed. Aziel Jackson has developed into a salable asset. So has Sam Adeniran. So has Nico Joachini.
Indiana Vasilev took another step up. The thing I will agree with you even more on Carnell is I think he managed the season in terms of ebbs and flows
beautifully
for St. Louis. Like had them ready to get out to that hot start, to be urgent and insistent and physical and direct and efficient to start the season. And they did that. But then other teams like, okay, well, we have the scouting report. And then at times have said, okay, well, we're not always going to be all the way up in your grill pressing. We'll come back into that mid-block. Okay, when the time is right, when Klaus goes down, Adeniran is back. We'll build him up. His confidence is flying. Nico Joachini all of a sudden goes from Orlando, where Joachini was like, that was not what I signed up for, to a team where he feels truly valued, and his best form came out. It just feels like in any given moment, he's found a way to get the best out of his team, and when the best is not there, to sort of reset things and get their momentum back rolling. And that's one of the most difficult things, I think, for an expansion side and a team that just, they don't know each other.
Yeah.
They haven't been together. It's their first time experiencing all these things. So, yeah, completely agree.
I was going to say, don't get your hopes up for unanimous decision. There have been some funky votes in the award season. I think 2 years ago, a player voted Christian Cáceres Jr. for MVP. I don't know. I forget if it was a player or not, but Christian Cáceres Jr. got 1 first place vote for MVP like 2 years ago. So, well,
we're making our case. Pepsi Man hit me in my DMs and said, hey, I hear you guys always talking about, hey, we're mostly been average of late, et cetera, et cetera. He's watched every extra time since the beginning of the season. So Pepsi Man is locked in on ETR since St. Louis arrived. He said, talk about us and give me some positives. I didn't want to lead a horse to water here for you guys, but we found a way to get it done for Pepsi Man in the meantime. All right, some other results here. The biggest playoff implications. Let's start with the teams in New York and flip side in DC United. DC at home, sitting on the edge in the Eastern Conference, trying to survive, but doing their best to throw it all away. They dropped from 9th to 10th because they lost at home by 2 goals to the Red Bulls. Now, if it was 2-0, I would have been surprised because the Red Bulls don't score and don't seem likely to score at any given time, certainly not multiple goals. It was 5-3, and Christian Benteke had a hat trick, and you lost with your playoff life at stake. That's terrible. That's no good. New York City, meanwhile, got the worst team in the East in Toronto FC at home and won 3-0 after a rain delay / weather delay on Saturday. Pushed that one to Sunday. Let's start in the Eastern Conference. I'm going to ask you this. Which team below the line is most likely to make the playoffs? And if not, we'll dig in a little bit more on them. But in the Eastern Conference, Charlotte up 2-0, draw at home to Philadelphia, 4th time in 5 games. They give up a goal to draw in stoppage time. There's a reason why it's called the Peloton of mediocrity. I mean, nobody wants Montreal go to Atlanta and,
Montreal,
understandably, but still lose.
Montreal
5-1.
have a negative 15 goal
Chicago lead and then tie to New England. I mean, the door is wide open for Miami because Montreal, DC, New York, Chicago, Charlotte are all standing there ushering them through, saying, right this way. Playoffs we don't want to go. Playoffs are this way.
Yeah, I mean, to answer your question, of the teams below the line, Miami is the only one that I think gets there. And it's gotten to the point now where I do think Miami get there because for the reasons that you just, the teams in front of them have been terrible. Charlotte, as you said, Chicago, I think winless in 7.
Winless since Leagues Cup.
Winless since
5
Leagues
losses.
Cup. The Red Bulls, they make every game a Red Bulls game. It really worked out this weekend. But do we trust them to string a run like that together? Like they're still starting Tom Barlow up top. No offense to Tom Barlow, but like during the stretch run and the teams around you are DC they've gone in the tank. NYCFC have gone in the other direction. 3 wins, 2 draws in their past 5 games. They do host or they travel to Miami this coming weekend. But even if they lose that game, I like their schedule and I like their form. And that leaves Montreal in 8th place. Montreal have 4 games left. They are at Orlando, home to Houston, home to Portland, and finish up at Columbus. They're a terrible road team. I don't think they're taking points from either of those 2 road games. And then their 2 home teams, it's weird because they're both Western Conference teams. The Houston one is on short rest for Houston. Houston's been good, man. And Portland has been the best team in the league for the past 3-4 weeks. It's tough for Montreal. Like if you looking at it now, I think Miami catch Montreal. I think they're the only team in the Eastern Conference below that line who looks anything like a playoff team.
Here's a question for you in the mailbag. Ale, Chillin' Chong in my DMs. I grew up in Spartanburg, South Carolina, going to all the Panthers training camps. As a result, I have cursed myself to Charlotte sports fandom, with Charlotte FC following in the aimless footsteps of the Cardiac Cats. That's the Panthers, it'd be Orlando in our case. Is there any hope of a decent system developing for Charlotte, or am I cursed to a cupless existence? What is going on with Charlotte? Because this crater is one that they are digging for themselves.
I will just say, from the outside looking in, it looks like there is a conflict between the sporting director and the coach, because this team, Christian Lattanzio, has a very different idea for how soccer should be played than the pieces suggest Zoran Krneta has an idea of how soccer should be played. And you could see it most in the disconnect between Swiderski and Capetti. All of us see that and say, oh yeah, just play a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-4-1-1 with Swiderski, who's kind of a playmaking center forward. Put him underneath Capetti and play against the ball a little bit. And that's not what Lattanzio wants.
Yeah, I don't think it's been pragmatic enough. Like you said, I think that's pretty obvious. And that is exactly what the thinking was behind signing Enzo Capetti. It was the team they wanted to free up Karol Swiderski to play a little bit more free rather than having to be, you know, the occupying center backs and stuff. And two, they're like, because he's more creative like that, he can do both. Like, we need a 9 who's like Capetti, who's gonna run through the goalposts if he had to, stuff like the way that he occupies and runs and does everything else. And I just don't understand why that's not the obvious focus. Like, that's the pieces in front of you are built to play like that. Like, go back to the beginning of the year when it was like Brant Bronico as a inverted left back or whatever it was, and they were getting ripped down that sideline like a time and time and again. Why are we overcomplicating things? Like, at any point for some of these struggling teams, like sometimes when interim managers come in, like Lattanzio last year, he simplified things. He went to the 2 strikers up top. It was Daniel Rios and Karol Swiderski, and that was the best that they played.
Yep.
And then they come back this year and change it all. And again, like you've said this on the show before, like this is clearly Lattanzio's like preferred game model. And if you're gonna go down swinging, right? Like you want to have no regrets. I tried to do it the way I thought was best, and hey, it didn't work out. It doesn't work out. But like in MLS more than anywhere else in the world, because of the salary cap, because of the roster restraints, because of everything else, you need to just pick the best system, formation, and tactics to what you have available. And whether or not that's poor communication or poor, I guess, working together. Again, if it's the coaching staff and the front office.
It's not an aligned vision.
No, and it's clear. And like, that's the thing. It's just not been pragmatic enough. It's been, I don't know, it's disappointing because a lot of these things are obvious, right? Like, or feels obvious from the outside.
The other thing, though, it's not an aligned vision, but it's also, this is not a roster that, even if the visions were aligned and they were maxing out, this is not a roster that's a 55-point roster. This is more of a 45 to 50-point roster.
Yeah, it's a borderline playoff team.
Yeah,
which is what they're aspiring to become. But you cannot say, hey, is this the front office or it's the coach, when you're having individual errors of mind-blowing proportions.
For sure,
that's in second half stoppage time. But those things do trickle down into the squad. I get that, but it's a universal failure.
None of us forces Oren Cronetta to make Kamil Jozwiak a DP.
Yes.
You know, so like we just bagged on Lattanzio there, and I think he has done a poor job this year. I thought he did a very good job over the final 20 games of last season. It's tough, but like he's this is not the Atlanta United roster that he's working with. This is not Cincy's roster that he's working with.
One final point for me on this is that, like, yeah, it is disjointed, and like I agree with that. Like it's you know, a couple of square pegs, round hole, all that stuff. But like they're in this squad. There's like several, like, all right, that's a good piece. That's a good piece. Like Swiderski, like again, when he's used correctly, that I think that's a good DP. Like Capetti, maybe I'm crazy for still kind of believing in him as a DP forward. I think that those are two good building blocks. Like Malanda, Corujo, the center mids, like Ashley Westwood's been really good this year. Like there's a lot of pieces in this team, but like fullbacks has been an issue borderline since day one. Like Christian Fuchs was pretty good, but he was playing like left center back sometimes or whatever. And that was clearly a short-term thing because he was at the end of his career and everything else. But it's just like there's, and wingers, like you said, there's been no like high-level wingers, despite Jozwiak being a DP and some of the other kind of mechanisms that they've used. Like they have what should be a U22 initiative or a young DP player on the MLS Next Pro team because the roster doesn't have room for another either young DP or U22 initiative player as currently constructed. So there's a lot of good, but it feels like it's not been maximized.
I mean, I look at the center back position alone. Hamadi Diop hasn't really played at all. He was a very high draft pick. He's number one overall draft pick. Sobaczynski, Corujo hasn't really played this year. There is injury issues with him. Tuiloma was a big time GAM outlay. I was wrong
on that. I thought that was going to be better than it has been.
Like they're playing Andrew Pivette, who they picked up as a midfielder in the Super Draft late rounds and have now converted. There's just a lot going on across the board, I think, for Charlotte. Anyway, let's get to Orlando City. Sunday night, massive game. No Lionel Messi, no Jordi Alba, no Sergio Busquets. 1-1 result in Orlando for Inter Miami, and they were leading on the road through David Ruiz. Huge point. Maybe not what they would have liked to see after going up. Who else? Big Duncan McGuire with the Meg job on Drake Callender to split these points. But Miami now control their own fate for the playoffs, basically. They're on 32 points, 29 games played. They have games in hand on everybody. The reason they control their fate is that if they win their games in hand, well, if they win out, I should say, they will make the playoffs. And in the league, that would be home against New York City, at Chicago, home against Cincinnati, home against Charlotte, and then at Charlotte on decision day. There is a question mark on that 10-18 game at home against Charlotte, whether or not Lionel Messi would be available or not. That is during an international break. I don't know what decisions will be made. He went to Bolivia and didn't play. And do they need him? So I don't know. What do we think of this result, Doyle, and the performance without the big three, I guess you would call
I think the performance was really good from Miami. They were the second best team on the night, but they were difficult to break down, difficult to beat. They scrambled well defensively. Tata Martino rotated a ton of players.
No Facundo Farias in the starting lineup either.
He's played the final 20 minutes. He rotated his center backs at the half. It was Aviles who struggled and Christoph who started. And then at halftime, Kamal Miller and Ryan Saylor came on, I want to say. So he was able to get rest for a lot of guys. Obviously, no Busquets, no Alba, no Messi. He was able to get rest for a lot of guys. By definition, a road draw is a good result, especially one that was played with a lot of intensity. At the same time, it does really trim down their margin for error. They have 5 games left. I think they need 11 points from those 5 games. So 4 wins and a loss, or 3 wins and 2 draws. That's tough. Even with them playing much better soccer than most of the teams in front of them, that's still very, very tough. And it's not a given. If they had held on for 3 points, I think we would be saying, yeah, Miami's in the playoffs. I think we would literally be saying that on this show today. But as it is, look, man, Portland and NYCFC were both dead 3 weeks ago. And now we're talking about Portland getting home field advantage in the Western Conference and NYCFC probably looking very safe at this point relative to the teams around them. Everything can change in MLS in a couple games. If Miami if Drake Callender goes into a slump suddenly, or they hit a post, or they get a penalty call against them, and boy, have they gotten a lot of friendly calls, by the way.
David Ruiz, no idea how he's on this field.
Yeah. Yep.
That scissor tackle on Mauricio Pereira was tough.
Yep.
That was a rugged tackle.
I have no idea how Aviles doesn't have a yellow card within the first 5 minutes for stopping a breakaway. So what I'm saying is that things can change very quickly. I still think Miami's going to get in, but as good a result as this was, the margin for error is very slim now.
And look, we talk about schedules and everything else and the lack of 6-pointers, air quote, before this. 3 of their last 5 games are Charlotte twice and Chicago. Yeah. We already talked about NYCFC this weekend. Again, that's an absolute
home against New York City. I know they're on short rest because NYC has 1 away win all year. And
then the other game is Cincinnati, which again, that's obviously very difficult, but so 4 of those 5 are against teams below the playoff line.
It can be done. It can be done.
Sorry.
Well, NYC is
Saunders.
Shockingly above. You guys want to talk Open Cup final real quick?
Sure.
Houston Dynamo visiting Drive Pink Stadium on Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Dynamo have had some heartbreaks in Open Cup. I was there when they lost to the Union in the final.
They beat the Union in the final.
Dang. I knew there was heartbreak. I just forgot whose heart was broken. Good point. I was there with Kaylin Carr. I now remember. It was very celebratory. Talked to DeMarcus Beasley. Yeah, Beasley poured beer on his head, I'm pretty sure, during the interview. Wow. I was live on air as all that happened. Well,
the Houston Dynamo have a history of winning
finals. Open Cups, but not on the road.
Correct. I think that stadium is going to be rocking. Oh. Houston have not been a great team on the road this year. They still play good ball, but for whatever reason, the home road differential for them, as it traditionally has been, it's been pretty gruesome. They are a team that like Miami, they are a team that want to control the ball in central midfield. And with Artur, who was rested this weekend, and Ache and Coco Carrasquilla, they have the personnel to do that. And then their front 3, I'm not sure it's scripted. A lot of the best attacking teams in the world, their movement in the front 3 is very scripted and very regimented, and you recognize patterns of play over and over again. I don't see that with Houston. I see just a lot of movement and good vibes and guys sort of like principles, right? Like, okay, if he's going near post, I'm going far post. I'll pull back to the penalty spot because he's making a far post run, and that's going to drag the defenders.
It does, like, to go back to the Baird goal we saw where they basically just played through a week ago. It does feel like five-a-side. Where it is very much like vibes and understanding spacing and being like, I'll take that space, and he's going to go there. Cool. This is how we'll move off of this, and it's been working.
Yeah.
Does Messi play?
Yeah.
Does he start?
I think so. But even if he doesn't, even if you only get Messi for the final half hour, and if he can only play a half an hour, use him for that final half hour, by the way. I think Miami are just prohibitive favorites in this one.
That Houston midfield trio, man, is something. Again, I know
it feels much more toss-up to me.
Does it?
Yeah.
And the Houston home field advantage.
Houston are away.
So what am I talking about?
You guys are both whatever you say is, I'm taking that as fact right now because
it's my bad.
Yeah, this game's in Miami.
Yeah,
it's technically Fort Lauderdale. I had to get something right.
Let's go. We're back, baby. We're back. Take that, Doyle.
All right. Yeah, I think you're right about them being favorites, but I do see signs of fatigue with Miami.
For sure.
Inevitably. Like, Kromoski was just like crawling at points.
For sure.
In that game last night. And that is a teenager with the legs you think could, if anybody could get through this stretch, it would be him.
But also, Houston played 50 minutes against 10-man Sporting, maybe 60 minutes against 10-man Sporting KC.
You couldn't break him down.
Couldn't break him down. They got the goal. They got one goal just before halftime off I think it was off a set piece.
Deflection. Yeah. Ache.
And Corey Barrett had one good chance late. But other than that, they did not. And Sporting KC's been good the past few months. They're not a great defensive team by any stretch, especially playing a man down. That's what Houston are on the road, man. They're just a different animal on the road. They did not look like the same team that had been dominant through late summer. You're right, Miami looks tired. That Houston team looked very tired.
Let me give you a home road split for the Dynamo, which probably reinforces your point that Miami are basically prohibitive favorites. Plus 21 goal differential at home. 31 goals scored this year for the Dynamo. Just 10 allowed. And the 10 allowed are right there in the very best echelons of the league. Like, that's better per game than Nashville at home. And it's just a tad worse than Cincinnati's home form. 9 goals allowed for Cincinnati. But it's the same goal differential as Cincinnati and just behind Columbus and St. Louis. But on the road, the Houston Dynamo have a minus 14 goal differential. 11 goals scored in 15 games. 25 goals allowed.
I don't expect them to get blown out. I would be really surprised if they win this game.
It's a one-off final. I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Better form away in the last 4, but it's hard to overlook those macro numbers. On the road for the Houston Dynamo. Inter Miami, Houston Dynamo, Wednesday, September 27th. Game starts at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. I believe there's a ton of coverage on the Golazo Network, including our good friend Susanna Collins, as well as Charlie Davies and many, many others. So tune in for that. I know I will be watching on Wednesday night. It is, of course, a 2-cup night because Campeones Cup is going down as well. How about in the Western Conference? We've talked a lot about the Portland Timbers, and I had some folks hit me up and say, Portland has earned a long segment. Make it happen. Their form is shocking. Gio Savarese leaves, Miles Joseph takes over, and the vibes, Tom, multiply.
Good vibes. Good vibes. Like you said, we were burying them after that 5-0 loss to Houston, and the joke that day was, hey, we did one of those playoff preview segments, which, again, when we're doing in August, things change so quickly. We're like, yeah, if this was yesterday, we all would have had them in the playoffs. And, now none of us do. And it's like, it's crazy how quickly things have shifted for this team.
Yeah, the West is absolute train wreck.
They're in 6th. That's crazy to me.
I mean, I think they're going to end up having home field in the
like they're 1 point off
in the first round.
It's unreal.
It wouldn't shock me at all. And like, if you're the Sounders and you're looking at it, like, if this playoff started today, it's Seattle versus Portland in that first round. And I don't think Seattle would be the favorites because Portland have generally owned Seattle the last few years. Even when Portland have been bad, they have really paddled the Sounders.
Please just direct this straight to Anders right now.
Right into the camera.
You keep going with that. What's that? Paddle. What else?
But also, they're just playing phenomenal soccer under Miles Joseph. They are 5-1-1. They lost their first game 3-2 under Miles Joseph, but they're now 5 wins and a draw in the 6 games since then. They have scored at least 2 goals in all of those games. And part of it is tactically, this team has really committed to playing a single pivot, no matter who's there. And it has been without Diego Chara for a while. Christian Paredes was there earlier, and he was excellent. Brian Acosta played on Saturday, and he was pretty good. But playing a 4-3-3 single pivot with 2 attacking 8s, right? Evander has been really, really good under Miles Joseph.
And did not even appear on the game day roster against the Rapids, excuse me.
So it was Noah Kaliskin, who was a first-round draft pick for Portland this game, and he had an assist on Santi Moreno's goal, and Santi Moreno has been the other free 8, and he has been reborn under Miles Joseph, playing centrally, getting more of the ball, and both of the 8s in this formation and game model under Miles Joseph have freedom to push into the attack. Like both these guys getting into the box at the same time with 2 narrow wingers. You do not see this from teams that play a 4-3-3 with a single pivot, because it leaves the central midfield too wide open. But Portland's kind of thrown caution to the wind in that regard, and it's been so much fun to watch. It reminds me, if anything, it reminds me of how Columbus play, where it's not necessarily about drawing out who goes where when, but the principle behind this team is be brave on the ball. Don't play 1-touch soccer. Play 2 or 3-touch. Get the opposing defense to step up towards you and then beat them off the dribble or beat them with short passing combos with the guys around you. And once you have created that man advantage and are out on the run, then you push forward. And that is very different from what it was under Gio Savarese when they were among the league leaders in long balls. They were 27th in the league in passes per possession, behind only ahead of only the Red Bulls in St. Louis City, who play a very different type of pressing game model. So it has changed overnight for Miles Joseph, and everybody back to front on that roster seems to be eating it up. And the other part of it, and it's tough to say this after, Juan David Mosquera had a kind of a shocker defensively against Colorado, but the fullbacks have been better defensively. And part of it is the one concession that they've made defensively is they are not sending those guys forward as early in the play as they tended to get under Gio Savarese. So it's been a ton of fun to watch. In particular, I've loved watching Santi Moreno because he's a player, when he plays with joy, he gives joy back to the viewer. And that's who he's been as a player for these past couple of weeks. And we had not seen that from him for 18 months.
There's a reason why when he was saying, I want out of here, this is not working for me, that a lot of teams around the leagues were like, oh, is that so? Yeah. Oh, we should probably call Portland. By the way, things that you didn't see coming. Diego Chara has he had his appendix out, right?
Yep.
And he's missed the last 3 games in normal conditions, normal years, any other time. You would
literally when that email came through and hit the inbox and Portland announced that Chara's going to be out for 1 to 4 weeks recovering, I said, well,
you rip the paper up and throw it away.
I hit the group chat. I said, well, there goes Portland's playoff hopes. That's it.
They've won all 3 games since. Now, it has not been murderer's row by any means as far as opponents go.
I think Miles
at Austin, San Jose at home, Colorado at home.
Yeah. That's fair.
But it's at LA, at Montreal in the next 2 games. That ain't murderer's row either.
Yeah.
This time of year, you don't get to make the schedule.
They beat Salt Lake at home. They went to Seattle and they got a point there. They beat LAFC at home. That's a good run of games, even before the schedule softened up a little bit. It feels to me like Miles Joseph, who goes back a ways with Ned Grabavoy, who's now making these decisions in Portland. It feels like Miles Joseph is coaching himself into the full-time job here.
Would you hire him? Do you think that'd be a good long-term,
long-term? He's an old Metro star, so of course I'd hire him. I don't know him well. He has the resume of a guy who, it's a Pat Noonan-style resume. When Pat Noonan got that job in Cincinnati, it seemed like, yeah, this is the natural next guy up for it. And Miles Joseph, he has a similar resume, maybe even longer.
Yeah, he's
than
older.
Pat's. Yeah, he's
49.
a few years older than Pat. So, team playing like this, guys completely bought in. The vibe's high. The vibes are high, right?
Vibes high. Vibes high.
Yeah, seems like it.
Knows the club.
Yeah.
He's definitely in the conversation for this. Like you said, he's definitely played as much. Like, they said it at the beginning. Yeah, Miles Joseph will be a candidate. Like, every single team says this about their interim manager, essentially. Like, anytime that there's, like, they have to get asked that on the press conference. Hey, is insert interim manager under consideration? They're always going to say yes. So, like, they already said that, but he is absolutely going to be part of this, like, in a serious way.
You know what it reminds me of? When Bradley Carnell took over for the Red Bulls down the stretch in 2020, and the vibes were high, and they played such good ball.
Cruel man.
Why didn't he get that job?
I know. Are we about to talk about Brian White scoring now, too?
Oh, man. We could go. Well, you know what? We could. RSL 2. Vancouver 1. Big win for RSL coming back. Vancouver down or up at the halftime break, 1-0 by Brian White. But RSL come back, snap a skid. I don't think they'd won since Leagues Cup either. 2 points back of LAFC, RSL, but this is the Western Conference for you. When you go look at those standings, LAFC are on 45 points. Minnesota in 11th are on 37. It's an 8-point gap between Minnesota and LAFC. And as far as teams trying to get home field advantage, I would buy all the way down to, hell, even Dallas. They got 2 games in hand on a bunch of teams. In 9th on 39 points. Like, it could be anybody. 2nd through 4th, 5th through 7th, and then sneak it into the wild card in the West. But a bounce back result for RSL. But
someone taught Anders the word mid.
I know he's
just running with it.
He's
because
RSL are
as
decidedly
Wiebe,
mid.
I want the viewers and the listeners to know what's happening. As Wiebe is mentioning specific Western Conference teams, Anders is just blowing out my eardrums, going mid. Someone taught him a new word.
No cap for real. That's
Oh boy.
Oh my God.
Well, somebody.
He's not wrong though.
No, he's not. No, he's not. The whole conference is mid. Jefferson Savarino, his relationship with Pablo Mastroeni is perhaps below mid, whatever that is. Something's going on. RSL's tweet out a personal situation is why Savarino was not in the game day squad against Vancouver. They tweet he'll be back in training on Monday. Jefferson Savarino jumps on Twitter to QT what personal situation, and then doesn't just QT like Jefferson. That's hitting RSL's mentions no matter what. But then at Real Salt Lake, that is that's good stuff.
The personal situation is that he personally decided not to defend in their midweek loss.
I can, from doing a little reporting on this situation, he was going to be left out because of, again, not defending much, and Pablo Mastroeni sending a message like he's benched several other players. Diego Luna took him a long time to get back on the field after this happened. So this is nothing, I guess, new in terms of Pablo Mastroeni's style, but Savarino was obviously upset with that. And then the idea was that we're not going to say this out loud to, protect you. So they called it a personal situation. And now he put the spotlight back on it. And that,
he made it a public situation.
Yeah. You're not defending. That's why you weren't in the match day squad. Yeah. Is that better? Somebody who was in the squad.
Like, I'm a designated player. Unfortunately, his numbers aren't quite matching up to the I won't defend moniker. But look, they need him. They need him.
Yeah. And somebody else that they need, and somebody else who was back in the squad for the first time, is Danny Musovski. He's been out of the team because of a contract dispute. His contract's up at the end of the season. His feeling and his camp's feeling was that there was the understanding that when he was traded for, that there was going to work out a new contract. That hasn't happened yet. He kind of got fed up with it, sat out. So he sat out, upset about it. And then, throughout this time, he'd still been working like one-on-one with a fitness trainer. Like, so he wasn't in training, but like he wasn't just sitting at home playing video games and watching TV or whatever, right? Like, so, there is no new contract, but he said,
he might have been. I want a couple hours in the morning to professional soccer players. It's like training, and then they're just chilling. So he could have been.
So he was like, all right, screw it. I want to come back. I want to play, and told Pablo, and Pablo was like, yeah, welcome him back into training immediately. Now he starts, and he's back in the team. We'll see what happens down the stretch. Again, there is no new contract. Like, that hasn't been resolved. It's just he's back for now.
Danny Musovski, if there is a next Brian White contender in MLS, a guy who is like very much under the radar, but is pretty clearly a starting caliber forward who is worth that starting money,
Yeah.
it's Musovski. If you look at, and we did this 2 weeks ago, but you look at his track record as a goal scorer for LAFC and now for RSL, he scores a goal about every 150, 160 minutes, right? Over 3,000 minutes full season, he's a 15 goal scorer. I don't blame him for wanting to be paid commensurate with that, especially because he is still this team's leading scorer this year.
Think about that in Houston, not to take anything away from Corey Baird, but Baird and Musovski is sort of a, hey, who's in form sort of deal. You control the ball. Musovski's not really a, hey, like aerial presence. He's more of a, I understand when and how to make runs, and I'm a decent finisher, and I'm opportunistic.
Seattle needs a goal scorer.
There's a
under
bunch
30.
of teams. I also did a little
Red
bit
Bulls?
of digging, and I don't think what I said on the podcast about a cap on his raise is entirely accurate.
Okay.
I do think he could get from a free agent contract, I believe it is up to the TAM number.
So it'd be about 680.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's looking around on RSL's roster and seeing a bunch of dudes who don't perform the way he does or produce the way he does
I
make
think
that money.
680, I think, would get it done if somebody.
I would imagine
Like,
so.
up
Yeah.
to-
That would be like a 400% raise.
That's
for him.
well, like that's. I mean, the negotiations, as far as I understand it, like it would obviously be a significant raise, but the two sides aren't exactly close. But that would be in the ballpark of that probably gets it done.
But back to this game, Vancouver, this was their 6th of this 7-game month-long road trip. Their second consecutive loss. They got a goal from Brian White in the first half on a really well-worked corner kick. I kind of owe RSL's defenders an apology because as soon as I saw it, I was like, how do you leave Brian White? Like, they left him open because Vancouver basically set a triple screen. It was brilliant. So that was really well done. But then Vancouver looked out of gas for the second half of this game. And credit to RSL, right? And this is a emblematic of what they've been under Pablo. They, even when it looks like they are dead and buried, like, they do not quit. And they came back and they scored 2 fairly fortunate but gutsy goals off of set pieces in the second half. They held on for dear life. They got a bit of good fortune when White's header was cleared off the line. We didn't have the perfect angle on that, but got to trust the call in the field. And then got a bit of good fortune at the end, where I think VAR ruled correctly that it was, like, literally the last play of the game, that it was not a handball in the box.
Yeah, that one's hard. I like hits him in the chest, I think, torso, and then I think it hits
So you're
Vera
saying,
in the right hand.
but what you're saying is that it's not clear and obvious.
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
A lot of I think and like waffling, and in that moment you want it to be, the shot was off target anyway. It's like, I don't know. I think justice was served.
I agree with that. I'm not saying that everything is right with RSL now, because stuff is starting to come out of that club that, like, things are kind of bad there, and the Savarino situation is maybe emblematic of that. But I think they're into the playoffs with this win. They're on 43 points. They have 4 games left. Even if they lose out, right? Even if they go 0-4-0, I'm looking at the slap fight below the line in the Western Conference. I don't see a team that's going to climb above 43 points.
I do want to congratulate Sporting Kansas City, speaking of that fight, for going down a man to the Houston Dynamo, who were rotated and still holding on. This was after they were clearly fatigued, tired, exhausted, all of the words there, synonyms, midweek, and lost to Nashville. And then they held on to this result with down a man. Like that's honestly incredible to me.
But now they go at St. Louis without Johnny Russell, and then they're at RSL, and then they finish home to a Minnesota United team that is not winning anything at all.
But if
these
they're ever
days.
going to win anything, it's on the road.
Yeah.
And maybe have time to heal up Reynoso. Yeah, I think it just ran out on them. Games played.
Do you think that Taylor Swift also got an invite to the SKC game this weekend and just chose to go
No.
to the Chiefs game with Travis?
No, well, that's a Patrick Mahomes.
I can't believe
He's a part owner. He's a part owner. So Patrick Mahomes,
Like-
maybe if we let this develop a little bit, I think next year we could have a T Swift at Sporting Kansas City.
Mahomes did
Or new stadium for the Current, of which Pat Mahomes
There
and
we
his
go.
wife are also owners.
all of the above.
Maybe we get a T Swift on the river. Maybe she spends an afternoon in the Northland.
Who says no?
I'm just saying.
Who says
Go
no?
down to River Market.
What, you're looking at me?
Yeah, just to see.
No.
Evan Mansell in my DMs. No clever email, he says, but it's crazy to me how 2 through 7 in the East is playing almost a mini round robin in the last 3 to 5 games of the season. Would love to hear the Extra Time crew break it down and discuss what they see happening. Love the show. I think we will save that discussion for Thursday. But
and
if
that's
you
what
look
we'll
at
do
this,
the free agents discussion that we teased 15 shows in a row.
yeah. But this one's more timely.
Evan, we're really gonna get to it.
We
promise.
are gonna crush this.
Promise.
No doubt. I've done the research. Campeones Cup, however, is on Wednesday. That is a little bit more timely. LAFC Tigres coverage starts in MLS Season Pass on Apple TV at 10 p.m. Eastern. Jillian Sakovitz, I know, is in LA doing sideline work. There'll be a full studio show for this one. Should be a really good time. LAFC have some demons, some skeletons in the closet against Liga MX in finals. 2020, you'll remember they lost to Tigres. That one was, I believe, played in Orlando at Exploria during the pandemic, so a little bit strange. It was one leg instead of two.
No.
2023, of course, very fresh. Leon in the CCL final. Lost that one. And then Leagues Cup, the quarterfinals against Monterrey as
Set
well.
a record in the CCL final, by the way.
For?
They were the first MLS team to lose both legs.
Tough record to set. And then, by the way, Tigres just beat Monterrey in the Clásico Regio this weekend, I believe, 3-0. Gignac with 2, and then Diego Lainez playing at wingback with a goal.
No way.
Yes.
Oh my God.
This, I mean, I looked at Tigres, like, I don't think we saw the best of Tigres in Leagues Cup.
No.
They are a wagon. Like, if you look at their lineup, they're a freaking wagon.
The thing
They're
is,
so good.
They are. The thing is, are they going to wear down? Because they're a wagon filled with 32 to 36-year-olds.
I don't know, but they got, I mean, I don't care about it long term. Just tomorrow.
All right.
Tomorrow, 2 days from now, Wednesday.
Depends on when you're listening. I'm the holder.
How excited are you for Campeones Cup? Where are you on the excitement scale?
I'm pretty excited. I have to admit, watching LAFC in Philadelphia this weekend maybe dampened my excitement more than it should have. This is a game that does not bear mentioning.
Holding back. They were holding back.
Anytime that we can watch Tigres against an MLS team, like I love that. And particularly like, a Campeones Cup, so it's a reigning champion as opposed to, a round of 16 Champions League.
And this is the measuring stick, right?
Yeah.
And we talked about this a ton during Leagues Cup, is that MLS, by and large, has passed Liga MX, except for Tigres, Monterrey, and Club America. Those are still the three, and like Pachuca on its day can get into there, but only like it's a different sort of path for Pachuca. But those three teams, Tigres, Monterrey, Club America, are still the three biggest teams in the region. They have the biggest budgets. They have the best fan bases currently.
Agree to disagree. Atletico San Luis leads the tournament currently.
Yes, clearly.
As we all knew and predicted
as
from
we all
Leagues
knew.
Cup.
Yeah, well, I mean, Anders is a big Mazatlan guy.
By extension, the Revs, I believe, now have a 5-point gap at the top of Liga MX. I think it's something like that.
But to get back to the point, and not another Wiebe bit.
Sorry.
Like any time an MLS club can play one of these teams with something on the line, it is a big moment. Because again, this is still the measuring stick, and what Tigres have done over the past dozen years in Liga MX, less so continentally, it's been remarkable. So yeah, Wednesday should be a lot of fun.
Yes. I'm very excited as well. And it's also nice that it's sort of
a lot of fun.
It's coming at the end of a not packed Wednesday night, but a 2-cup night. US Open Cup straight into Campeones Cup. You're also going to get that third and fourth box up so you can watch riveting matches between the Colorado Rapids and Vancouver Whitecaps. It's the last of the Whitecaps 7-game road trip and a big game for them as they look for seeding in the Western Conference. And then Philly FC Dallas is low-key interesting as well. Obviously, FC Dallas clinging to a playoff spot, in Philly, as we've seen in the past, need to have home field advantage in the playoffs. If I get any more Gen Z slang in my ears, Anders,
is just terrible.
I am flipping this table.
Domino.
And coming after you. No cap. All right. Let's, real quick. MLS Next Pro, the playoffs start this weekend. The MLS Next Pro Decision Day went down. If you weren't paying attention, we have a 3-way tie at the top of the Golden Boot race after a Decision Day hat trick from, drum roll please, Remy Cabral. The second Cabral, bro. up to 19 goals with Colorado Rapids 2. 22 minutes. A hat trick. Amazing. Jack Lynn of Orlando City B and MD Myers of NYCFC 2 also scoring on decision day. I think 19 goals is the
correct.
Is the lead at the top. They all get the trophy, according to Anders. So that's pretty cool. And the playoffs start this weekend. We'll get into that more with Bradley Wright Phillips on Thursday, and David Goss will be back. And Dave's been calling some Next Pro this weekend, so should be good. Okay, let's do our Golden Boot update because you're here, Tom. So
funny, we didn't ever do this one when we were flying high. It's just only waited.
Well, you know that we were just mid-season MLS, bro. So our notes from Anders. All caps, St. Louis City font. Big weekend from Doyle's team in an effort to avoid the wooden spoon. That means I did not have such a good weekend because we're fighting for that one.
Benteke had a hat trick. Klaus is back healthy and scoring every week. Willie Agata.
That was the upset of the weekend.
Big dunk back getting a goal for me. Gabby Pereira scored in Qatar. Do I get that one?
Nope. David Goss creeping closer. 4 of 12 players on the Tom Kalin early season juggernaut are no longer in Major League Soccer.
And then Van Zier just went down that includes Van Zier?
Oh, yeah, Van Zier, I guess, yeah. Because he's hurt. He's hurt. He's out.
If you gave me the over-under on how many of your players aren't currently available for selection, I would have went over 4 if you had me guess.
So
that's good.
And Matt Doyle, 67 goals, 27 assists on the come up.
Can you
You've got a goal from Dan Joveljic.
Yeah, that was big.
Big time. All right. The Wiebes, 74 goals. So we still got a gap here. I still feel good about my spoon avoidance. But, Tyus Magno with a goal for me. That was nice. That's nice. And David Goss, 82 goals for David Goss. Let's see what the gap's at right now, Tom. 83 goals for the Tom Kalin duo. This got real interesting, Tom. This got interesting. What would be the best scenario, Doyle, for the fighting Tom and Kalin's to lose to Dave?
Another 19 penalties for Daniel Gazdag. That's what it would be. Every time I look up when I'm watching MLS 360, I see Philadelphia getting another penalty. I was like, oh, great.
Johnny Russell hosed us. He's out against St. Louis. That's tough. So no availability. You got availability issues on that one. Chicho Arango, got to get him going. Rui Diaz, man, that could be the wild card. But I really think the best possible scenario here is that the crew who have locked in on decision day a home field advantage, Derek Etienne scores a brace.
Derek Etienne brace.
Dab God brace.
While Diego Rossi is being rested.
Excuse me, I would like to say there's
Etienne
been a
plays for
miscount.
Atlanta now, so
there's been a miscount, which I've been trying to say over text that you guys all ignored because you're furthering your own agenda.
Talk to Florida.
Chicho Arango does not have 5 goals in the Golden Boot draft. One of his goals came before the draft, so Goss has -1. So it's a 2-goal lead.
Wow.
And I already raised this. No, go to the stats, Anders. Are you yelling in my ear?
Do you smell that? Do you smell that?
Oh, we'll recheck, Anders. Go ahead.
It smells like desperation.
I just care about facts. I'm sorry.
Wow.
I care about facts and logic.
That sounds like desperation. All right. Anything you guys want to add before we get out of here?
It's a witch hunt. I want to add that this is a witch hunt.
Tom's ready to storm the Capitol.
That we would like to...
If we hold on to this with 3 players still playing, I'm going to bring in a banner and put it in here.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. All right. That's it for us. Enjoy midweek action. U.S. Open Cup on CBS Golazo. And then, of course, on MLS Season Pass on Apple TV. Campeones Cup and 2 midweek games. To boot, we'll be back on Thursday to talk about match day...
34 and a half, 35?
It's 30...
This is a great...
6?
It's not
35 and a half?
It's not officially a match day. It's because I think both games are makeup games. So we'll be here to talk about these mysterious midweek games.
Yeah.
And
two finals. Nailed the dismount.
Yeah.
Nailed the dismount. Enjoy your week, everybody. Adios.